Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukutali.
And a wonderful morning to you. It's wet again out there, in Colombo anyway. But nevertheless, welcome to Newsline, live as always from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And this morning, to help answer the question, amidst a sea of corruption and all sorts of other happenings, what is happening to the economy and to revenue collection? Will the government have enough money to meet its obligations? Let's find out. We have with us the former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. W.A. Wijewardena. Good morning to you, Doctor.
Good morning, Faraz.
Wonderful to have you here. We really appreciate you cutting short your sleep patterns to be here. Sleep is very essential, isn't it?
Very essential, and a person will have to have at least 8 hours sleep per day.
Yes, otherwise it's...
Otherwise, what happens is the brain starts becoming a little dull and...
a bit warped.
And the necessary build-up, the rebuild of the brain,
right.
That process is stunted, and then you have a long-term implications for us.
So maybe that's why the Inspector General of Police, Pujit Jayasundar, was rather keen on getting people to do meditation.
Yeah, that's a good. Actually, even though some people had criticized him for us, in my opinion, meditation is a practice which all of us will have to do on a regular basis because it allows us to maintain our mental health.
I'm tempted to ask you all sorts of questions about the bond. Because obviously then those people haven't been sleeping properly because their minds are all warped. But anyway, that's another story for another day. But of course, just talk about the bond, the force, shall we say, behind perpetual treasuries, and one of the ultimate beneficial owners of that company, Arjun Aloysius, is expected to present himself with his bank statements to the Commission of Inquiry this morning. There's some speculation that he won't come, but you've got to give the boy a chance. Let's see if he does. In the meantime, let's ask Dr. this thing then. Dr. Wijewardena, in this everything seems to be corrupt. Corruption in this country seems to be endemic. It seems to be ingrained. Is that right?
That's correct. Even you could have seen for us in a recent television discussion, Deputy Minister Dr. Hasan Silva was lamenting over it because he said that from top to the bottom, from side to side, the whole Sri Lankan system is corrupt, and we economists call it that the corruption has been institutionalized, so that it has become a part of the culture of Sri Lanka. And what we feel is that the politicians and the bureaucrats, they believe that it is their right to get these unearned rewards from the rest of the economy, and therefore those rewards are totally their own legitimate earnings.
Right, it's like the bonus prize for coming into power.
And of course, on the other side, the people think that it is their obligation to pay those rewards.
My goodness, that's a very dangerous trend.
It's a very dangerous trend, and it is in terms of the development theory today. This has been considered one of the most damaging contributors to sustainable prosperity of a nation. Now, Sri Lanka is in that particular category today.
You know, it's so right what you're saying, because of course, if we had all this money, if our revenue collection so on is spot on, then we won't, and if all this corruption element component was removed, then the government would have far more money than it does.
Exactly. In countries where the level of corruption is low for us, it's not a big problem for the revenue authorities to collect their revenue. The reason is, if we just take a good example, now very simple example, what happens normally for us is that we produce goods and services, and those are traded in the market at a prevailing market price. When corruption is there, the producers will have to pay a cut to the politicians and the bureaucrats in the system. Therefore, they have to jack up the price. So eventually, that particular increase in the price is collected from the consumers.
Right.
So finally, it is the nation as a whole which has to pay a higher price, and as a result, they pay a lesser amount of taxes to the revenue authorities. So therefore, what is being collected by politicians and also the bureaucrats by way of these corrupt practices is a loss to the citizens, and it is lost to the government also.
Indeed.
So money which should have been received by the government is now earned by some section of the society.
But what bothers me is that, like you say, you said it was you economists have this view that it's become institutionalized. But what bothers me is that people seem to think that if it is the government that you are defrauding or you're robbing, for want of a better word, then it seems somehow or other, it seems okay.
Yeah, that is the reason for us, because what happens is that when they see that the people in power can have these unearned incomes, everybody else also thinks, okay, if we join that particular powerful group, we also can earn the unearned income. So there is an incentive for everybody to join the system so that they would be able to amass this unearned income for themselves. And finally what happens is the whole nation loses it, because the reason for us is if we start robbing from each other, at one stage there are no people from whom we can rob. No? So we are gradually moving to that situation.
So it's almost like a pyramid scheme.
It's a pyramid scheme, because just like a pyramid, you are very correct, because in the case of pyramid scheme also, at one stage we lose the ability to attract new customers.
Exactly. So then it collapses. At
that point it collapses. Yes, same thing happens to a nation also, when the nation is the whole nation has been covered by corrupt practices. It happens to a nation also. And this is why many economists say that the failure of the nations. Why do nations fail? The reasons they have attributed is the corruption has been institutionalized. People start robbing from each other. At one stage, they lose an income to rob from anyone, and that stage the nation fails. So we are now actually in that particular situation for us, because there are lots of instances we can quote, from politicians to simple bureaucrats, even to a mine employee in a hospital. They are all bent on these corrupt practices.
It's very sad, though.
It's a very sad thing, and it has to be halted. And if Sri Lanka wants to become a prosperous nation, as the present government has pronounced in its Vision 2025, we must put a stop to these corrupt practices at every level.
But when you're paying nearly $26 million a kilometer for a highway in difficult terrain, and when you're spending $10 to $12 million a kilometer on not so difficult terrain, and nevertheless the per kilometer rate is amongst the highest in the whole world, how on earth are you going to stop this corruption? It must be at an all-time high.
The main reason for us is the corruption watchdogs, the institutionalized constitutional corruption watchdogs are not performing in Sri Lanka and not doing their job. And in those instances, it is the civil society and media which have to bring it up to the notice of the people. And when we have a force built up by using the people's power, then only we can put a halt to this kind of practice. Because we always know, when it comes to corrupt practices, a minister might, or even a bureaucrat might immediately jack up the price of a contract. So the contractor will pay a higher amount, and they will get their percentage for the particular service that they produce in the economy. And finally, it's the taxpayers who will have to pay for that. So that is why the expenditure patterns of the governments of developing countries where corruption is rampant is pretty much high. In Sri Lanka's case, this is pretty much high, because most of the services which we can produce for a lower cost are being produced at a very high cost. As a result, the taxpayers will have to pay. Now when the taxpayers when the revenue authorities fail to collect enough taxes to meet that expenditure, there's a deficit in the budget, then the government will have to borrow money from local sources and also from foreign sources, and if that is also not sufficient, they resort to the convenient practice of printing money through the central bank. So eventually what would happen is either we are accumulating debt or we are bringing inflation to Sri Lanka. So that is what has happened to countries like Sri Lanka throughout. Inflation is high, and as a result cost of production is high. So it's a vicious cycle.
It's a vicious cycle.
Vicious cycle.
And then when we become so expensive, that's why we see that certain let's call them traditional industries like the garment industry. Is that why Sri Lanka is losing its manufacturing hold on there?
Exactly, because when the inflation is higher, people demand higher wages, and Sri Lanka started this garment industry in late 1970s for us, when the salary level of a garment worker was less than $50 per month. Today it is more than $250.
Wow.
So it is 5 times.
Yeah.
So Sri Lanka has already lost the competitive advantage which it had earlier in the garment industry. That is why our garment manufacturers are shifting their production base from Sri Lanka to Bangladesh and some countries in Africa. And they have already moved out because in search of lower wages, because garment industry is basically an industry where we use cheap labor, and if the labor is not cheap for us, then it's no more economical for the country to produce.
But do you sometimes think, and this is a question being posed by a regular viewer or listener, I don't know the name of this person, but I've got a number stored up. And it says here that the viewer says that it's true what you're saying, but don't you feel that it's, on this advice that you're giving, do you not feel sometimes that it's like pouring water on a duck's posterior?
It has happened in that way, because your viewer is correct for us, because I have been in my regular weekly column in Daily FT.
Yeah.
I have been writing about this from around year 2010 onwards. Right. And previous administration simply ignored it.
Yeah.
Current administration has already ignored it.
Yeah.
But of course what we do is we are keeping the population informed, citizens informed of the situation, and all the governments which had ignored this particular warning have done so to their own peril, and they have lost power because of that reason.
It's very sad, but by this opportunity I'd like to ask our producer this morning, Sarah Fonseca, would you kindly put on the telephone number, which is 0772 300 305. If you want to send in your SMSs right here, it's 0772 300 305. Send us your questions, and as far as we can, we'll ask those questions from our guests. So once again, 0772 300 305. You may just get that on your screen in case you've missed it. Your attitude is an expression of your values, beliefs and expectations. So said Brian Tracy. True?
Yes. In fact, for us, we have been brought up in a culture in the central bank where even stealing from the central bank 1 rupee, we were told it was a crime. So that's the culture we had in the central bank in the past. So likewise, because of that reason, we always raise a voice against that. Because I know a case where Mr. S. Javadan, who was the governor of the central bank, there was an employee who had just got 5,000 rupees transferred to his account when he was paying the salaries of the central bank employees.
Right.
And Governor S. Javadan immediately took action to sack the fellow. He was expelled from the central bank service. So 5,000 rupees.
Why did he do that 5,000? Was it he just took a loan?
No. What happened is, now he is the person who was sending the salaries of the central bank employees to banks. What he did was, he deducted it from one employee and put it to his own account. So it was discovered, and Governor S. Jayawardena immediately sacked him, because that is the type of discipline that we had in the central bank. So because of that reason, we have been brought up in that particular culture. Therefore, we raise our voice against this, because we know the damage it might do to a country when the country is completely overwhelmed by corrupt practices.
Thank you. But in the meantime, again, I'm getting a request from a viewer who's asking for that number to SMS questions. It's 0772 300 305, straight through here. So send us your questions and we'll do it. But that's very true, what you're saying. Was this the same governor who had to resign because he asked a bank manager to grant a...
No, this is N. Jayawardena. That's a long time ago. I am referring to Mr. S. Jayawardena, who was the governor from 1996 to 2004. Because you are referring to Mr. N. Jayawardena,
yes,
who was sacked by the government at that time, for the crime of soliciting a loan for his wife from the Standard Chartered Bank.
But he only asked somebody to look at it.
Yeah, it's just a, at that time that was...
So if we are going by that yardstick, then Mr. Mind, and I don't know what we'll have to send him on a rocket to a different stratosphere.
It's a matter for the people who have appointed him to take action against him, Farah, because when the matters, because in terms of the value system in the central bank, as pronounced by the founder of the central bank, Mr. John Exter, the governor should be a person of unquestioned integrity.
Absolutely.
Unquestioned. It doesn't mean that, if somebody had questioned about his integrity,
it is enough for him not
to be there. So if somebody had questioned, it doesn't mean that, he should have lost his integrity. It's just somebody had questioned, because that is the type of value that we give to the institution.
So that's a wonderful yardstick and bar for people who are saying that Ravi K. or whoever it is shouldn't have resigned because these charges are not proven.
No, not necessary. In the case of the financial sector for us, there's no necessity that these charges will have to be proven, because if the market comes to know that there had been a fraudulent activity and fraudulent practices are being practiced, it actually makes the matters worse for the entire market to operate smoothly. And when the market doesn't operate smoothly, that country cannot develop itself, because the financial sector is the heart of any economy in the world today.
Somebody is asking us, a viewer is asking us, whether A.S. Jayawardena managed to catch any big ones.
At that time there was no, because he was very strict on that, and if any financial sector institution had been doing it wrongly, he would have immediately taken action against them.
Now then, I want to ask you this, Dr. Jayawardena. As a person who's lived your life in this country, you've had children and grandchildren, and who's made your life in this country, and you are with that necessary specialist expertise, which if you had wanted to emigrate from here, there would have been several countries whose immigration rules would have welcomed you with open arms. But you stayed here, and you worked and you dedicated your working career at the central bank. My question to you is this: as citizen Sri Lanka, how sad are you when you see the level of corruption? If you tune into our network, you would have heard about this Central Expressway business. Before that, there's this Bond Gate, and then there was the Outer Circular Highway. These people come and say, "Oh, we saved 30 billion, we saved 25 billion." How do you feel?
No, I mean, not only me, for us, everyone in Sri Lanka is now concerned about this. Even some of the honest politicians are extremely concerned about what is happening in Sri Lanka. And many people would like to have a clean society here, and if they think that they cannot have it because of the political pressure or the ignorance of the politicians, they simply migrate to other countries. That is what has happened, and many young brains have migrated.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Is that probably why Dr. Harsha De Silva was so emotional recently?
He was very emotional, and he in fact brought it up, and he said even he is willing to quit politics if this doesn't stop. And because he said he joined the politics not for this kind of purposes, he joined the politics in order to provide some technical know-how to Sri Lanka so that the country can become a prosperous nation.
Well, you seem to have got a fan club this morning, because I've got two SMSs nearly the same, and I'll just read it out to you. Why doesn't the present government employ people of the caliber of Dr. Vijayawardena on a contract basis as consultants, as such a lot of experience is going to waste?
Well, of course, we can't blame the government for us, because I have done my service to the nation, and I am a retired person now, so I am entitled to pursue my own personal interest, because I am now heavily involved in promoting education in Sri Lanka, so which is again...
But that's not a bad thing, and that's not being selfish. It's actually trying to and you have our group's admiration for doing this, because we need more people like this.
Yeah, but of course in my weekly column in Daily FT, I am giving my wisdom to the present government if they want to apply it. It's free of charge, and it's not functioning as a formal consultant, but of course the views are freely expressed, and also I address various fora, Sri Lanka Economic Summit and so forth, and by doing that I am actually presenting my views to the rest of the nation.
Somebody is asking here what your take is on the decision to purchase Greek bonds.
Greece bond, of course, we have a problem there for us, because now first of all we have to clarify to your viewer. Sri Lanka has a wealth called the foreign assets. Foreign assets. Those foreign assets belong to the nation and not to the central bank or central bank governor or any other person.
Right. Are they the custodians of that?
Central bank is simply the custodian of the foreign assets of Sri Lanka. And why do we have these foreign assets for us is, if the country has a difficulty in making payments to the rest of the world, it is just like having a savings account by an ordinary citizen of the country.
Right.
We use the money in the foreign assets to make out the payments, so that we don't have to default any payments to the rest of the world.
Right.
So when it comes to investing those foreign assets, all central banks throughout the world, they actually follow a very prudential system of investing, and the instructions within the central bank has been that those foreign assets should be invested in securities which have been rated by at least 3 rating agencies at or above A level, A and above. But when it came to investing in the Greece bonds, they were invested when the Greece bonds had been rated by the rating agencies at B plus level, which is the wrong thing. It was the wrong thing.
Right.
And
but you all didn't know that it was wrong.
I don't know, because I was not in the central bank at that time. But what I hear from what I have read from the documents that have been published is that the central bank guidelines says that it should be invested in securities at or above A grade. But at the time it was invested by central bank, it was B plus, which is below. Which was below.
Right.
What happened was, actually what has happened here is the central bank authorities had speculated. It was a speculative type of investment. They have thought that the European Union will come and rescue Greece so that these bonds will become valuable in the future and they could sell it at a higher price.
Right.
What happened was, contrary to their speculation, the European Union did not rescue Greece. As a result, the prices went down. They become completely worthless. So the central bank lost money.
Right.
So these are called speculative type of investments, which is wrong. I can give you another example from Bank Negara Malaysia, the Central Bank of Malaysia Faras. They also did a similar investment in 1992 in thinking that the United Kingdom will remain in the European Monetary Union so that sterling pound will be strengthened over the years. But what happened was, John Major, the Prime Minister, overnight decided to withdraw from the European currency system.
Right.
So as a result, sterling pound fell. So Bank Negara Malaysia had a loss of about $5 billion because of that particular reason.
Right.
One transaction. So because of this reason, central banks are supposed to refrain themselves from speculative type of investments, and the Greece bond is also similar to that. One such instance.
Accepting that, then what about the Supreme Court? They looked at this. They said there was nothing systemically
in fact,
wrong.
I don't think the Supreme Court would have been apprised properly at that time by the lawyers who took the case before the Supreme Court.
I see.
Because this particular factor wouldn't have been brought to the notice of the Supreme Court, because
this business about A plus
and the B plus system.
Right. Now then, what are the what was the good thing about it, or the good thing that turned out to be a good thing? Was it the fact that it was a small component of
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, when it comes to investing money, any investor would not try to see profits from each and every investment for us.
Yeah.
It's a balancing of the total investment portfolio. So in that sense, if the central bank has made profits, which it had done in that particular year out of other investments, which should compensate for the loss here, then you can immediately forgive the investors for doing that. But what normally happens is that in the case of a central bank, when it invests the foreign reserves of the country, they are not supposed to make speculative type of investments.
I have one viewer. These messages are coming in thick and fast. Very good. One viewer who says that unfortunately he doesn't agree with us, that and he reckons that Dr. Harsha cannot be considered an honest person. That's that viewer's opinion. We don't subscribe to this, and our legal department shouldn't get too worked up about that. Okay, this is just somebody's comment. But Dr. Wijewardene, today the Bond boy is due to give evidence, or he's due there. Are you going there to follow the proceedings?
No, because
or have you got better things to do?
No, Farhad, because I just depend on the media to find out what has transpired there.
So you are pretty confident that the media is not doing a hatchet job?
No, I mean, you have to look at all the media reports and then combine them in order to build up the correct picture which has taken place, because I always watch your channel in the night. Then I read the other media people who had published there, because I am not sorry. But of course, you know, the evidence that surfaced yesterday about the selling of these bonds to various intermediate parties and finally ending up in the Employees Provident Fund was something which we had talked about for a long period of time, and now we have concrete evidence to prove it.
Wonderful. We're going to have to end this now, because otherwise the producer, Ms. Fonseca, will not be very happy. But there's another question here. Please ask Dr. Wijewardene if the Greek bond was a corrupt deal or a mistake, yes or no. Which one?
Well, it has already been determined by COP that it's a mistake in investment. It's not a corrupt. I don't think there's any corruption behind that. It's actually misjudgment of the market conditions.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I was going to ask you, is it a bit like, soon after the war, as it finished, on the day it finished or the next day, there were all these claims, they said, we have the best army command in the world. And then later, the same people shoved that poor man into jail. So that was politicians' flourish. And was this decision to buy Greek bonds, was this a central banker's flourish? And he thought, well, okay, look, let's do this. We might make a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason. I mean, because there had been some feeling inside the central bank that they have to maximize the revenue for the government.
Right.
But of course, by doing that, they have burned their own fingers.
I think it was... we got loads of messages today. Thank you, viewers, for this. And I'll be sending a copy of this to the powers that be, just to show them that the viewers are actually interacting with us. And on that note, we'll get you more details. About the Central Expressway and how the process is being abused by Minister Lakshman Kiriyala, and the entire process being abused. And it is our position that in the interest of transparency and accountability and good governance, this whole process should be cancelled. The President should appoint a commission, and if they really do want to build this blessed expressway, Section 3, they should recall the whole thing and do it properly. On that note, Dr. Vijay, thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate your presence here, especially because when you talk about the 8 hours of sleep. Bandula, he gets more than 8 hours of sleep because he's always sleeping. All right then. On that note, thank you for watching. Take care. Have a great day. And remember, the Bond Baby is at Housetoft today. Go and see him in action. Take your ID card with you. Take care. God bless.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.